Hi, this is Linda and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. In this video, I'm putting together two projects using the Cocoa Daisy Cedar Snow collection. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, today I'm going to put together two projects using the Cedar and Snow collection from Cocoa Daisy. So this is a December theme kit, and I've already put together one project. If you missed that video, I will share a link at the end of this video and down below if you're interested in seeing it. So what I've been doing this year is taking the Cocoa Daisy kits and going back and documenting 2020 in my daughter's album. And I will show you guys. I have been doing this by creating a divided page protector pocket page, recapping each month this year. So here's the one I created for December in that previous video. But I've also been creating some other pages if I feel like there's more stories to tell. I haven't been forcing myself to do it, but some of the months I have been creating things because there were just extra stories. And what I decided to do was document two different stories. So I wanted to do 2 pages, and I just have some white cardstock for my stash, 8.5 by 11, just a standard page, because these two are going to go back to back in my album. And the first story I wanted to document was about a snow day. So I have these 2 photos printed from the snow day. And so these are all stories about my daughter for her album. And then this one, I just have a photo of my daughter, and I want to just do like a 5 things about you right now page. I'm not entirely sure what it's going to be. I don't know if I'm even going to do like just in December or like a recap of the year because it's the end of the year. I'm still thinking about how this one's going to look. In my mind, I'm thinking I'm going to do like a column here using some of the papers from the kit potentially. And then I'm going to use the side here for some journaling. On this one, I'm thinking I want to use these vellum snowflakes from the scrapbooking kit to create my own patterned paper in the background. And then there's a journal card in here, which I need to find. It says Snow Day Adventures. Then I'm thinking I want to use this to do some journaling on here, and I'm probably going to put a larger title on here or something, or maybe even leave that as my title. I haven't decided yet. There's also some of these like that says Snow Day and Burr. I think maybe this one goes really well with that, so I probably will do some sort of embellishment cluster. I'm thinking I will probably include a patterned paper. There's this like pretty blue one here which might go well, and these, although they're 6 by 8, they are actually 8.5 tall, so they fit perfectly on the 8.5 by 11 paper like this if you want to create a background. So I'm thinking I might want to use that one, but I also really love this green plaid with it, and then I also really love the black plaid. So I'm probably will do one of those as a background on here and maybe use the other one on this one, one of the other ones. There's also this beautiful green one that I think would go well on here. There are ones that have more of a pattern, so this one has like this floral pattern, which is so pretty, but I think it might be a little too busy for what I'm going for. It definitely doesn't go with that photo, but maybe with these. Although I feel like it goes better vertically, like this. But we'll see. So I'm going to go ahead and put you guys on fast forward and get both of these pages put together. Okay, so I decided to work on the snow day picture first. So I'm going to put the other one to the side while I work on this page because I had a better idea in mind about what I wanted this one to look like. So what I started with was trying to figure out what pattern paper I wanted here. The background I'm using is definitely going to be the white cardstock, and my photos are pretty light because of all the snow. So I wanted some sort of contrast behind them. And I think I figured out why the Cocoa Daisy 6 by 8 papers are actually 8.5 tall, and that's because then you could put them on a 8.5 by 11 page across, and they will go all the way across the page, which is actually amazing. And once I figured that out, I really wanted to do that in one of these pages, but I end up not doing it because it just didn't work with the layouts I wanted. So what I ended up doing was backing each of these photos, which are 4x4 squares, on one of the pieces of blue cardstock. I have to use both of them because it's just a little too big to fit both on one.
and I'm just creating a border for each of my photos that is going to be this light blue color, which is not entirely solid. It might be hard to see on the video, but there is a pattern on this paper, and it just adds a little bit of color around the photos to help provide contrast between the photo and the background, which is going to be mostly white. It also makes them a little bit larger, so staggering them across the page fills up a bit more of the space, and I like the size that it ends up being. So my plan is to layer these 3 elements in the middle of my page and then create a background using the snowflakes from the scrapbooking kit. I am marking on here approximately where I want these things to be because there's no reason to put snowflakes behind where all the photos are going to be. But what I'm going to do is just go ahead and lay out all of the snowflakes in a random pattern on my white cardstock in places that will show, and just add a little bit of rolling adhesive to each one so that it stays in place. I think I forgot to mention at the beginning of this video, but for this project, I'm working solely with the scrapbooking kit and the pocket card add-on kit. This kit works really well for pocket pages, of course, with the pocket cards, but it's also great to create traditional layouts. And that is one of the reasons why I'm creating this page, is to show you some ideas for using your Project Life cards on a traditional layout. I was inspired to do this page completely because I saw these snowflakes in the kit and I just wanted to use them all so much. They're so cute. And I wanted to use them all on one spread, so I wasn't putting some of them in my stash. I don't know if I actually ended up doing that. I wanted to, but it was maybe just too many because there's so many in the kit. But they're just so cute, and the colors and everything worked perfectly to tell the story about the snow day that we had in December of 2020. I decided on a pattern for the snowflakes you can see there, and I'm just kind of adding a few more and laying out my photos and elements to make sure that the snowflakes do look kind of evenly dispersed across the spread. Of course, I have that huge gap in the middle, but that's what's going to be covered up by my photos and my journaling. The next step is to trim off the edges of the snowflakes that go off the edge of the page. When I'm creating a pattern like this, I always want to interact with the edge of the page because it makes it look like the pattern will continue on if the page didn't end there, and just gives it a much better look, in my opinion. Then I took it over to my sewing machine and used some white thread to stitch down each of the snowflakes, except for some of the ones that were going off the edge of the page, just because it would be a little bit difficult to add thread to them. And it wasn't actually necessary to hold any of them down because I did use some rolling adhesive. But the idea with the thread was just to add a little bit of texture, and I absolutely love the way that it looked with these snowflakes. When I use my sewing machine on paper, what I'm doing now is pulling all of the extra white threads through the back and just adhering them down to the back of the page with Scotch tape. I'm not creating any knots or anything like you would when you sew on fabric, or sometimes when you sew on fabric, you reverse direction of thread at the end to kind of knot it in place, and that doesn't work so well on paper because paper is not as forgiving as fabric when it comes to needle holes. So you don't want excess needle holes, if that makes sense. But this does take a little bit of time to pull everything through the back and cut it off and stitch and tape it down. So I did speed this portion up a little bit faster because it's not that pretty to see. And I had quite a few of them to do because I stitched down all of those snowflakes. But I really loved the subtle look that it creates on the page. Stitching is one of my favorite ways to add texture on my projects. And I think I've talked about this here on my channel before about, the need to kind of how a lot of us feel in this community, like you need to buy all of the newest and best products and supplies. And when I first got into scrapbooking, I was very, very much on a budget. And what I found was the best use of my funds, if I wanted to have a stricter or tighter budget with scrapbooking, was to invest in those tools that I could use over and over again. A sewing machine is not cheap, but I use it on probably 50% of my projects, and I'm very happy that I have it. and I have taken the time to learn how to use it. That said, I don't think you should go out and buy all of the newest tools, and not that a sewing machine is new, but just to have like all of the tools. Like I don't have a Cricut, I don't have a Mink. A lot of these tools I have never purchased. I do have a Silhouette, but it's like the original one, and it doesn't work very well. But a sewing machine is one of the tools that I really felt strongly about. And I do recommend having one or two go-to tools that you can use again and again. Anyways, back to what I'm actually doing on the project. So I adhered down my photos, and then I took my journaling card and I used an older rolling date stamp to put the date of the snowstorm on the card. And then I'm going to do my journaling. And this brings me to another new hobby that I dove into recently. For my birthday, I got my first fountain pen, which I'm not actually using in this video. It's a Sailor Pro Gear that I got for my birthday, which is a gorgeous fountain pen. But I also got some inks, and I loved it so much that I decided to invest in a couple other fountain pens myself, some cheaper ones, so that I could just kind of play with them. I don't know if I'm going to use them very often in my scrapbooking. I do plan to use them more often in my journaling and my planning, but for this spread, I was so excited for this new pen, and the color of the ink here is blue, so I just thought it worked really well. So anyways, what this is a TWSBI Eco pen, and then the ink is a Sailor Yamadori, which is a lighter teal. And I just love how it looked with this spread. It's also a fine tip pen, but because the way TWSBIs are, the fine tip is actually pretty broad in my opinion. So it just looked very juicy on there, and I just thought it worked really well for this spread. I did struggle a little bit with my journaling because it has been 4 years since the snowstorm, but I had some facts that I could add, so I added those. And then I also was reflecting on the fact that this seemed like one of the last snowstorms that my daughter really kind of acted like a kid, because she jumped in the snow and like rolled around in it. And I have that one photo of her. She's like laughing after she fell into the snow, because we had like 2 feet of snow. So she just let herself kind of free fall into the snow in the backyard. And that is just such a kid thing to do. And I think by the time we got the next snowstorm, she felt too old to kind of play in it and would rather just stay inside and be warm like me. So I thought this was kind of a nice occasion to document. And I didn't even realize it at the time that that was going to be the last time that she played in the snow as a child. Anyways, I added some of the washi tape from the kit and a couple of the chipboard pieces just to kind of end this page. And I considered adding a few more embellishments, but I decided I really liked it as is. And I am going to call this one done and move on to the next. So for the next spread, I was remembering the fact that these papers go all the way across, and I wanted to use that here, but I end up not doing that because I did have a vision in my head for what I wanted this layout to look like before I started. So I had this photo I took of my daughter in December 2020. And if you'll recall, I am filling in stories in December of 2020 in her album. And I wanted to use this photo on a spread, but I didn't particularly have a story that went along with the photo. But especially for documenting my daughter, but even sometimes myself, my pet, anything like this, I like to do currently lists. And it's basically a compilation layout of just random stories at the time of the photo. So for this one, it's going to be a currently layout, but currently December 2020, which obviously is not right now. But I am reflecting on just some of the things that were current at that time about my daughter. And my plan is to create a list of 5 stories on here that are about her at this point in time. I also pulled over the rest of my Cocoa Daisy products from the Cedar and Snow collection, because on this spread I am continuing to work with the scrapbook kit and the pocket card add-ons, but I'm also pulling over the other products that I got this month. If you want to see more about what products I'm working with, I did have a video earlier this month where I shared a complete unboxing, and I will link that one for you guys down in the description box below if you are interested in seeing what products I am specifically working with and my thoughts about them. So I was looking at this alpha and just kind of thinking about how I wanted the spread to work. I really wanted to make it work with that paper like that. I really love this kind of like grid paper that I have. And I also loved that card with the pine needles, and I was thinking it would make a great border down the side, but I finally decided to scrap it and go with my original plan, which was to have a vertical column with my photo and pattern paper, and then along the side to have a column of 5 stories. So I'm just trimming down this pattern paper to match my photo. I had originally printed my photo at 4x6, but you could see that I did trim some of the top off when I was thinking about using it with the paper in another orientation, which doesn't really matter. I was just a little bit of extra background. And then I'm creating a kind of like landing on the page with this washi tape here, with the thought that this washi tape would kind of ground the rest of my project. And so what I'm going to do is use that to divide the page. On the left-hand side is going to be my pattern paper and photo, and on the right-hand side will be my numbered list. I'm using these number stamps that I recently picked up on Amazon, and I will link them in the description box below. But I'm just going to stamp out numbers 1 through 5 for my 5 stories. Now, I definitely could have not stamped yet and done my stories first and then added my stamps at the end, because then I would be able to adjust the length of my stories based on what I was actually writing, as opposed to the size of the numbers. But I decided against that because I just wanted them to kind of be evenly spaced. I ran this through my new typewriter. This is my typewriter Olive. If you haven't been here, I recently picked her up, and I did share more about her on Instagram, and I used her in a previous video. But I actually had filmed this video before that other one. So this is like the very first time I used her. So I'm just kind of learning how she works. So I have figured a bit more out at this point, but she is a completely manual typewriter, and she's just gorgeous. So I typed out my stories, and I was just kind of reflecting on things that were going on at that point in time. So the first one was the fact that she's a sophomore at this point in time. And I just kind of reflected a little bit on her grades and how school was going as a result of the pandemic, which was ongoing in December of 2020. For the second one, I made a comment about how she still says silly things like when she was a kid. And I put this in here specifically because I had flipped through my Project Life album in preparation for this page to get an idea of some stories that had happened at this point in time. And one of them was I had written down a quote from her, which says, "I can't wait to be an adult so I can get hairless cats and put them in sweaters." And at this point in time, she was a sophomore in high school. She was very much still a kid, but also wanting to be an adult. And I really had a lot of fun, especially looking back now that she is 19 and is more of an adult. And looking back and seeing those childhood moments still peeking through at this age. For the third story, I wrote about how we had a lot of family movie nights at this point in time and listed out some of the movies that we had watched in December of 2020. And I really was only able to recall those because I had documented that in my Project Life album. For number 4, I documented about our Christmas and what we did that year for Christmas to celebrate, and the fact that she redecorated her room after Christmas. Like, that's basically what she did on Christmas Day after opening gifts, because at this age, a lot of what she wanted was like decor items and things to put up in her room. So she was super excited to kind of redo her bedroom at this point in time. And then for the 5th one, I just wanted to do something a little bit sentimental. So I wrote about how this was such a hard time for her because of COVID, and at the age she was just wanting to spend time with her friends. but how as a parent, I felt really kind of lucky because I got to spend a little more time with her than I otherwise would have. Because she would have been off at activities and with friends and sports and everything. But because of COVID, the silver lining for me was that I got to spend more time with my teenager while she was still at home. Now she has moved out and I don't see her as often. She is now a sophomore in college, so it's not the same. And it was fun to write this reflecting back on that point in time. Anyway, so those are the 5 stories that I journaled about, and I just kind of wrote at what I was thinking and kind of cut it off when it felt like I was hitting the bottom of the number stamp. And as I said, I could definitely have started with the journaling and added the stamps later, but this way worked for me. I also wanted to point out that because I was using this typewriter, the typewriter is not intended for typing on cardstock. It's intended for typing on like thin typing paper. So in order to feed the cardstock through, I had to use some thin paper first and then kind of use it to feed it through. And then when the paper came out, you can see it's a little bit curved, but it will flatten back out again as I add other pieces onto the page. And then I will ultimately put it in an album, which will hold it flat. So now I'm going to work on adhering the rest of the items down onto my paper. I started with that plaid paper, and then I'm going to put another part of the plaid paper at the top to create a column, and then my photo is going to be in the middle. If the paper had been 11 inches tall, I would have just cut one strip, but because the papers were actually only 6 by 8.5, this way I was able to make it look like it was an 11-inch piece of paper by having the gap behind my photo. So I accidentally got a little bit of adhesive on there, unfortunately, but I will figure out a way to deal with that later. So now I have the bulk of my story down. I'm trying to decide what else I want to put on here. I went through all of the journaling cards again to see if any of them had something I wanted to cut out for a title or for an additional embellishment. And I decided against it and instead decided to do a title by using the washi tape and the alpha stickers from the scrapbook kit. So this washi tape is like a kind of gray or beige kind of color, the stripe. And I think that worked really well with the themes and the colors of this kit. And then this alpha is a puffy green alpha, which works really well for December. And I liked it on this spread because of the Christmas tree in the background. It kind of helped bring out that green. So I'm using this to create my title, which is just going to be the word currently. But of course, this is not now. This is December 2020. And even though it's going to be in her album with the other December 2020 things, I was thinking at this point in time, I wanted to get that date on here. Of course, I wasn't going to put a specific date, partially because I did not journal this in December. And so it wasn't like a specific date in December that this was happening. This was just kind of generally life at this point in time. But I will get back to how I'm going to do that later. Next, I wanted to add some embellishments at the bottom of my photo. So I used another one of the washi tapes I had on one of the chipboard tags that says Happy Winter Mood, because I just liked the colors and style with the page and felt like it was really grounding. Next, I decided to use the stamp set that came with the scrapbook kit. And I have to apologize, mine, because of the way production is to get them to the creative team, it does not have the printing on it. So you cannot see it very well on here, but there is a like sprig of a pine tree. And I'm going to use the green ink from Ali Edwards, and I'm going to use that to just kind of stamp this at the bottom of my journaling. And I felt like this green worked really well with the currently text at the top and the tree to kind of create a triangle of green on this page. I will add a little bit more green towards the end as well. I decided to use one of the word phrase strips from the cousin kit, that's the cousin sticker kit, and those are intended for you using in your Hobonichi cousin, and I do use them there, but they're also great for using on scrapbook pages. And so I added that just right there on top of that sprig of pine as an added little embellishment. then I was just thinking about what else I could put on the left-hand side. And it was still bothering me that there was like that little bit of adhesive on the photo that was showing. So I kind of tore up some of my letters so that I could add like one of these stickers on the background there. So this is just like a sprig of pine needles. And I really love how it turned out. I wish I had kind of thought about that in advance so I didn't have to rip up my letters. But, you know, it is what it is. And I really love how it ended up coming out. And it worked well. Like taking those letters up was fine. So now I'm using this is just one of the die cut pieces, and I'm just trimming it down a little so it's a little label that has a Christmas tree on it, and I figured this would work really well to add the date. So I'm going to use my favorite alpha stamp here that is from Amazon, and instead of using black ink like I usually do, I'm going to use the green ink again to stamp out the word December, and then in black I will stamp 2020 beneath it, and that will be how I include my date on this spread. These little die cut pieces are stickers, so I'm able to peel up the back to adhere it to the page once I'm done with my stamping. I did not speed up the stamping quite so much this time just because I know you guys have given me feedback that you want it to be a little bit slower so you can see a bit of my process. So I'm trying to find a good balance between having time for you to kind of see what's happening and to talk about it, and then actually not having it be too boring. So I did actually use rolling adhesive on there. I guess I just completely forgot at that time that it was adhesive, but those are adhesive backs, so I'm not sure why I did that. But anyways, I adhered it there and trimmed off the edge that went off the page, and then used my tiny attacher just to add a little bit of texture, and I'm going to call this one good. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And as always, I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Bye!